Hello, BookTube. All right, we are engaging in part 2 of a 17K Q&A. 17,000 subscribers. And we are at That Reading Guy. When will you begin self-publishing your work, especially your autobiography, Odd Dog? Also, it's been a while since the last Steve stream. It has been a while since the last Steve stream. It's true. There are a number of reasons for that, but I've missed it. I will be on a live stream tomorrow. This video is going out on a Sunday. Monday the 27th, I'll be on a live stream that Alan Big Hard at Big Hard Books and Classics and Greg and another bit of Reads, they do a regular live, and I'll be on their live stream tomorrow, Monday night the 27th at 8 o'clock Boston time. Of course, it's not quite the same experience as a Steve stream because Greg largely ignores the comments, which makes me pull my hair out. But maybe he won't this time around. If I'm constantly giving him side-eye, maybe he'll pay attention to the comments field. But we do need to do a Steve stream. But in answer to your question, I am seriously contemplating self-publishing. I know I say that every year, but this is different. I am waiting. What is this? The 26th? I am waiting just about 2 weeks to get into the final moments of the final negotiations, the final hand-holding for publishing a book. One book, and then another, then another, then another, then another. But they won't be Odd Dog, my projected autobiography. They will not be that. Let's see here. EOINR90. Congratulations, Steve. I first discovered this wonderful channel while you were in the midst of your epic Daily Penguin series. I know you've made significant changes in your library in recent years. I was wondering, what is the current state of your Penguin collection? I have a whole bookcase. I don't have a whole wall anymore. But I didn't need the whole wall. The wall was full of authors I didn't like. It was full of doubles, triples, and even quadruple copies of things, just because they were Penguin classics. It had books in it where the edition that I most want is not a Penguin classic. And also it's the stuff that was on that wall mainly because it was a Penguin. So it needed to be shrunk. It was drastically shrunk. The Penguin bookcase does still grow, but much more slowly. Bell Bottom Blues. Hi, Steve. Number one, what kind of music did you listen to when you were in your teens? Dexy's Midnight Runners. It was music. It's John Philip Sousa. Every day, all the time. And question number two, if you could choose only one book to keep out of your collection of books, what would it be and why? I don't understand this question. No matter how many times I see it, I don't understand it. If there were a book like that, where I could look across shelves and say, if I lost all the rest of these, I'd keep you, I'd get rid of all the others. I've never done that. I don't have an answer to this question. Thanks. I love your channel. Why, thank you. That's very nice of you. Although you misspelled love. Bibliomick says, congrats. Do you have any quick highlights / memories from any time you may have spent in the northeast of England? Northumbria, Tyne, where? Oh, well. Wooler. Wooler. I don't know if Bibliomick will know this quaint little town. I was just passing through. That's all. I was walking down long, beautiful country lanes. I was accumulating dogs as I went. I had a bunch of dogs to start with. All the dogs that I accumulated, this was an eon ago, all the dogs that I accumulated were coming in from neighboring fields and farmlands, hot for bear. They were coming in viciously running, growling, ready to kill, ready to attack this little crowd of dogs that was walking down the lane. And all of them changed their mind, and all of them became mine. And that crowd just grew and grew. I don't know what the people at the High Street of Wooler thought when we all first got there. Believe it or not, I know there are plenty of bigger destinations not that far away from Wooler, but well, it's a long story. I could tell it to you over wine and calzones. I made myself at home. The people were wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Got lodgings. Just thought I'd spend a couple of days there, maybe walk around. It's beautiful, beautiful countryside. Oh my God. I was headed up ground. I was headed into the hills. But I thought I'd spend a couple of days. I met someone. I met someone there in Wooler, in Northumbria. I met someone who was very nice, very wonderful with the dogs. Said, why lodgings? Come to the farmhouse and stay. for as long as you like. Come to the farmhouse. Pack your bag. You don't have to. The dogs are welcome, especially since 2 of them in the crowd are mine. That's why he originally found me in the first place, because he was looking for his dogs. You're free to come. I went, talking the whole way. Wonderful, wonderful conversations. Under any of you are familiar with, the asker of the question, I'm sure you're familiar with the sky in that area. It just goes on forever. It's like the vault of a cathedral. It's just beautiful, like nothing I've seen outside of the Mediterranean. And we got to, his farmhouse, and he was explaining along the way. I was asking the usual questions. What do you do? I work. He works the land. What's your family like? And he was reticent about that. And when we got to the farmhouse, I realized why. He had a sister who had moved away to pursue a career. No savagery about it. No hard feelings. She'd moved away to pursue a career. His mother was long dead. He said on the way out there that it was just him and his father, and I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna meet a gnarled old Northumbrian farmer, and this is his son. But his father had an accident and was bedridden and also non-responsive, just living there. Nurse came in once a week, but other than that, it was the boy. It was the son who was his caretaker. And that was sobering, but he seemed to be able to compartmentalize it, seemed to want me to compartmentalize it, so we did, walked around a lot, fixed some meals, saw the countryside and whatnot, talked a lot, even laughed. And he asked me to stay. Almost nobody ever did that in my travels. He asked me to stay. Hands in the pockets, not quite looking at me kind of way. Reticent, short sentences kind of way, but he asked me to stay. He said, Dad's not going to last forever. He's not going to live long. He's failing. Despite anything that anybody can do, he's failing. I'd love it if you stayed. And I didn't. And I often wonder about that. I often think about that. So that's right in the heart of your territory. That is right in the heart of your question. Okay, let's move on here. Just a random guy. How many books have you read this year? Assuming you even keep track, wouldn't blame you if you don't, considering how fast you read. As of this morning, I have read 561 books in 2024. Pretty good number. I'm going to get that up quite a bit, but it's a pretty good number. Wine calzones. Steve, you said on a previous library tour that the biography section needed expanding. Have you planned out the future of your shelves? Well, the biography section did need expanding, and then David Murphy came over 2 months ago, and we did expand it. It required just a simple wrench of thinking on my part. It's exactly why I want to invite someone else to look at these kinds of problems, because I wasn't coming up with that on my own. And it also required a huge amount of moving books, and that goes so much faster when you've got someone else to help you. And now I have done that. Now the biography section is moved and has room. So I don't know that that'll stay true, but yeah, that move was done. Josh Larkham says, you mentioned you have taught books before, I assume at university. What is your favorite one to teach and why? Hands down, Hamlet. Hands down. And the reason why is to watch it work. I like to watch it work on the most mulish, most monosyllabic kid in the back of the room. I like to watch it work on them because it's going to. You give Shakespeare half a chance, and it will. The half a chance that you give Shakespeare in an academic setting is you, the teacher. You are the half a chance. You are the half a chance. No good you sitting there in the front of the room and saying, come on, find half a chance. No, you are the half a chance. I'm well up to that challenge, and there was no one uninvolved by Act 2 of Hamlet. Any time I've ever taught it, there was no one uninvolved. So, you give Shakespeare half a chance. Laurie in Texas says, congrats on 17K. It's hard to think of a question when you have discussed so many topics in the years. I've watched you. I sympathize. I say the same thing. My question is, if you could choose any time in history to have lived, when would you choose? Right now. Right now. Ms. Behaving says, hi, Steve. You mentioned contemporary literary novels, fiction novels, don't have endings. Can you name a novel or two without more complete endings, please? one or two novels without complete endings? Is that what you're asking me? So you're asking me to name contemporary novels that don't have good endings? You name it. You name it. And practically any novel that you name that's out right now simply stops and doesn't end. Practically any one will fit that description. I think if that's what you're asking, God, the list is endless. Constantino6668 says, congratulations again, Steve. Thank you for making videos every day. Just a couple of short questions this time. Promise. Well, we've had already someone writing a 1,000-word paragraph. Best Byzantine history. Well, best Byzantine historian is Anthony Kaldellis. Kaldellis. Definitely read him. He just did, I think last year, had a 1-volume big history that is the kind of thing I've been urging him to write for years. You could do that, something called The History of New Rome or something like that. But any of his books on Byzantine history are great. Since we are doing Dune in June, I gave up after Heretics. Is Chapter House worth it? Does it get any better than Heretics? Okay, all right. If you're going to try the rhetorical maneuver of front-loading in a loaded question, you shouldn't do it on a Catholic who's trained by Jesuits, because it's never going to work. The question, is it better? Does it get any better than Heretics? Assumes, on my part, an agreement with you that Heretics is not good. Heretics is, in fact, great. So I'm not going to answer the question in the terms that you ask it. Heretics is fantastic, and so is Chapter House. They cannot be read as individual books. At that point in the series, you cannot read them. You won't be able to make any sense out of it unless you've read the others. So my advice to you would be to reread Heretics and then move on to Chapter House. Maybe that, or maybe start with God Emperor and move on from there. You can start with God Emperor and then finish out Frank Herbert's Dune books. But there's no drop-off in quality at all. Not for Chapter House, and also not for Heretics. And lastly, a bit of a weird question. Well, we've had a couple of weird ones. Just read Sallust. Do you think Caesar was part of Catalan's conspiracy? I know that the standard routine, the standard historian answer is that no, he wasn't. But he was such an incredible crap heel that I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't put it past him. I don't trust anything. In any situation where you have a sprawling panorama of facts all moving at the same time, you can count on Julius Caesar to be the very worst mover in that scenario. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. Thanks again for all the videos. Never stop. Okay, thank you. EVYP, do you find you can often tell if people are readers without specifically asking? What are the tells? Not usually, no. I know that people have said there are tells. I've never seen them. Not reliably. No. Are you good at crosswords? Not really, no. No. I'm very good at find a word, search word. But I'm not particularly good at crosswords. I think it's just a matter of practice. That's all. Thank you for all the videos. Well, you're welcome. My pleasure. Andy D72, the last book to make you seriously question your worldview or change your stance politically. Well, we can leave politics out, but worldview, I don't know about change my worldview, but significantly question it. There was a book called Planta Sapiens, in which the author makes a very concerted and very convincing case that plants have a kind of sentience. That they are aware of their surroundings, that they care about each other, that they recoil in pain or fear from certain environmental stimuli, most certainly including humans. I have not been able to get that book out of my mind for the implications that it has. That range a lot more widely than just wide-scale farming. I have not been able to get that book out of my mind. I would love to see, I wouldn't love to see, because I don't have a dog in this race. But I would, if you know what I mean, I would love to read a refutation of that book. Although I chased down a lot of the author's references, and I don't see that it's refutable. And that's pretty scary. That's pretty scary to think that. Let's see here. Jess Bookgirl says, Steve, I have a few questions. Number one, what type of music do you like? I would ordinarily say here John Philip Sousa all the time, but Baroque music. Baroque music. All the names, all the Italian names ending in E-L-L-I that you don't know. So you know Vivaldi. But there are 100 others that you don't know. We have all their music, and I love it. Absolutely love it. To have it on while I'm working, I love it. Question number 2, is any of your relatives huge readers? Yes. Number 2, what was the toughest book you read and why? Nothing really in the sense of, we had this in an earlier question, not really in the sense of tough of getting through it. Because I read like a critic, and books are the enemy. They are gazelles on the savannah. So I'm not intimidated by them at all. Some of them are denser than others, certainly. Stephen Kotkin's gigantic books on Stalin, his gigantic Stalin biographies, they are not tough in the sense that I think you mean, but they are tough to get through. It's a huge amount of material. Last year there was a book on modern Chinese thought. Very dense. Very, very dense. The ones that would actually be tough for me to get through, mathematical treatises on the Fibonacci sequence or whatnot, I don't read them because I know that I'd be totally out of my depth. I wouldn't understand what I was looking at. So I don't indulge in those. I guess that would count as tough if I did that, but I don't. I would be useless. Critically, I would be useless if I read such a thing. And question number 3, what is your favorite videos to film? Well, I don't view this as a TV show or network TV night of must-see TV. I don't view it that way. I view these as conversations, all of them as conversations, even the ones where I'm not explicitly inviting conversation. I still view them as conversations, so they're all fun. As far as I'm concerned, the only way you could have a favorite video to film is if you were thinking about an entertainment roster, an entertainment lineup, and I don't think of my videos that way. PatTube says, any advice for someone who wants to become a writer and or a literary critic like yourself? Have a day job. Don't quit that day job. I guess beyond the obvious things like read a lot and read widely, which I love doing anyway. You're leaving out something. You're leaving out a big thing there. For example, is it worth doing an MFA? Thanks in advance. If you're in America, no higher degree in any college, an MFA or anything else is worth it. You'll be saddling yourself with literally 25 years of debt, which will have such a negative impact on your life in those years that it far, far outweighs, utterly eclipses the marginal good that might come from the degree that you get from amassing that debt. So don't do it. Don't even think about it. If you're talking about an MFA, if you're talking about an MFA that someone you know who has money is paying for, fine. If you're talking about an MFA that's extremely affordable or free, fine. If you're talking about something where you're going to have to go into debt, don't do it. Regardless of what it is, it could be an MBA. Don't do it. It's not going to be worth it. You're going to be hurting your future decades much worse than helping them. And you're not guaranteed that time, right? You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So it's no use you saying, yes, this means 25 years of never eating anything but water and ramen. But after those 25 years, I'll have that degree and I'll be debt-free. You don't know you have those 25 years. Don't do it. Don't make decisions like that. But in terms of becoming a writer and or literary critic like myself, one of the essential things that you left out is writing. You should be writing every day. 5 pages every day. 5 pages every day. You should have the discipline of writing. You will be learning how to write. No MFA could possibly teach you the ins and outs of how to write, and especially the most important thing about any writing, how to find your own voice. No MFA program could even come close to teaching you that, as well as writing 5 pages a day. That will teach you all the things you need to know about writing. That's one of the major things. And then, of course, the idea of becoming a literary critic, first, I don't advise it, because it's not exactly a road to riches. In the United States right now, there are only about 3 or 4 literary critics who do nothing but that. Hardly any. In fact, the number might be smaller than that. It might be just 2. But it's a very small number. So I don't advise that as a career at all. But if you want it as a side thing, if you want that to be part of your world, well, then the thing to do, first of all, is to write a lot every day, no days off. And then if you have a particular kind of writing that you want to do, in this case, literary reviews, well, then you want to write lots of literary reviews. Lots of them. Lots of them. A mountain of them. Not 1 or 2 precious little polished gems. A mountain of them. And then once you've done that, well, then you want to start flogging them around. You want to start flogging yourself around, putting yourself into the notice of literary editors near you, a local publication that runs book reviews near you, maybe a larger publication, slightly not so near to you, that runs book reviews, contact their editor and say, I'm an aspiring book reviewer. I don't have any kind of credentials, but I would love it if you give me a try. I have a book in mind for 2 months from now. I'd like to review it. If you have anything in mind, I'd love it if you would give me a chance, that sort of thing. Also, myself, I am a literary editor, both for a newspaper in Georgia and for an online literary journal called Open Letters Review. It's a good way to build what we used to call a clip file, and that's largely what you need to approach another editor. And you can go to an editor without it. You can say, I'd love to try. I would love it if you give me a try. There are plenty of editors who will go for that. But you could also build a clip file at Open Letters Review. Plenty of people have done that and moved on to other venues. Be happy to help. Let's see here. Melody at 1685 says, my apologies for the nosy questions. I can't help myself. Some of your videos are made in front of the bookcase with an embroidery of Frida. Yes, somebody sent me that. And to the left of it, there is an edition of the Silmarillion I don't recognize. I'm sure there is. I have like 5 copies of the Silmarillion in the little book room. Could you give us a look? Which is your favorite edition and why? Well, I'm not going to get up, if that's what you mean. I have no idea which edition it is, but I'm sure that there are 4 or 5 editions of the Silmarillion in there. I really need to change that. Should only be one. My favorite edition, probably, of the Silmarillion is an illustrated deluxe edition that came out a couple of years ago. That's really... one of you just recently sent me an illustrated edition of the Silmarillion. Very nice of you to do. But a couple of years before that, the publisher sent me, Houghton Mifflin sent me, an illustrated Silmarillion. It's actually part of a box set you can get now, but I got it from the publisher. I squealed about it on this channel. That's probably still my favorite one. Let's see here. Books for Eric. Not just book related. What's something you enjoy that most of your viewers wouldn't expect you to enjoy? And vice versa, what is something you unpredictably detest? Well, I don't think there's anything that I unpredictably detest. I'm pretty free sharing my detestations on this channel. I mean, I've mentioned all the stuff. No, I don't know about detest. I've mentioned all the stuff that I absolutely will not do. I guess lines, waiting in line. I hate waiting in line. I know nobody likes it, but I guess unpredictably detest might work for that. I hate waiting in line so much that I almost categorically won't do it. No matter how important the thing is. I almost won't. There's almost never a situation where I say, there's a long line, but I have to stay. I generally don't do that. I hate it. Just hate it. Since long lines are almost always, almost exclusively, the product of bad customer service. And I can't stand bad customer service. I hate it. Just hate it. Anyway, but in terms of something I like, that you wouldn't expect I would enjoy, I swear, most of my life, I'm talking about a good 99% of it, revolves around either books or the bean. Almost all of it does. So I'm hard-pressed to come up with something that I really, really like that you wouldn't already know that I really, really like. The driving range? Maybe? Maybe that counts. I love going to the driving range. Golf. Just going to the driving range. I love doing that, but aside from that, I can't think of a thing that isn't book-related. Gerald's Bliss says, congrats, Steve. As a distinguished reviewer yourself, I don't know how distinguished I am. I'm kind of the Virginia creeper of the book world. What is your opinion of the works of, and especially the influence of, Michiko Kakutani? Kakutani was the main book reviewer for the New York Times forever and ever. And it is amazing to me, and it was amazing to book review friends of mine at the time, that her influence at the time was very much a New York kind of thing. It was the exact kind of influence that Nathan Rich had in the theater world. And that what's-his-name had in the restaurant review world. It's a very New York kind of thing, where the whole city is buzzing about what such and such a critic said about some new thing. Kakutami could break a new release. She could break a new release. She could make it so that her review runs on a Monday, and the book launch party that you have for Tuesday, where you had 300 RSVPs, suddenly 3 people show up. Because it's so au courant. It's such a New York, ooh, have you heard thing that Kakutani panned the book. A number of literary critic friends of mine at the time, for decades, for at least a decade, a solid decade, pointed out that that isn't the same thing as literary influence at all. No one outside of New York cares about that. And outside of that world, she had no literary influence whatsoever. Nobody even cared what she had to say about a book. Maybe you could say in a way that the New York Times panned a book, but she was so careful to inculcate her own persona into her reviews that she herself undermined the idea that you would associate her with simply the voice of the Times, the voice of the paper of record. Other critics, yes, maybe, but not her. It's amazing how quickly she has evaporated as a critical presence at all. She doesn't do it anymore. She isn't terrorizing that world anymore, and that's it. That's all there. So it turns out that's all there ever was. A lot of her contemporaries have far greater influence. Alan Cowley has a gigantic block of questions. Steve, congratulations on the new milestone, or is it millstone? Yes, I know. Just a couple of questions. One of your videos today, first books you just don't like, but which continue to nag at you. Yes, John Meacham's biography of George H.W. Bush. Could you mention a couple of these nagging books, and do they meet your critical standards for being good books, but have some other factor which makes you dislike them? If so, what do you think that factor may be? Well, I don't know. I've never been able to understand the exact mechanics of this particular thing. I mentioned this in a video just recently, and I was trying to come up with another example. There are other examples. Of course, they're not going to come to mind in this video. There's only a handful of them where I'm just never done with a book, where I critically can assess it. I can say, this stinks. John Meacham's biography of Poppy Bush stinks. And yet, it won't let go of me. I keep giving it another try. I'm sure there are other books. I'm just never going to get them off the top of my head. And I don't know what the factor is. It isn't that they're good. They aren't good. And second, do you find poetry more nagging than other types of writing? Not in that sense, no. No, it's just that really good poetry sometimes has this way of unfolding inside you over time. It's not the same thing at all. I know you have reevaluated Auden and are now reconsidering Philip Larkin. Do you think the appropriate criteria for evaluating poetry are more difficult to pin down? I think just that fourth element, the element of time, it's a thing that haunts book reviewers anyway. You don't know. When you're reviewing a book, you can have all three elements, the main elements, you can have them all nailed down. But you don't know the fourth element. You don't know whether or not you're still going to be thinking about this book in a year. You don't know whether or not more subsequent thought about the book is going to reveal things about it that you didn't see in your first analysis. You don't know that. You can't know that. And poetry is all that. Good poetry is largely composed of that element. So it's not the same kind of nagging. It's not that I close the door on it. David Levi says, hi, Steve. Have you ever been to the Hay Literary Festival in the UK? No. If you have been, what did you think of the festival and the town? Well, I've been to the town, and I liked it. I may even have been to the festival dragged there in its early days, but not the hoopla that it has become. I've never seen that. But I like the town. What's not to like? Ben025, I'm fairly new here, and one harrowing aspect of digging through your back catalog. I don't advise it. The back catalog is freakishly huge. But what is the harrowing aspect? Now I want to know. Has been discovering that some of my favorite writers fall into your ominous dude bro categorization. Yes, they do. Some authors do fall into that categorization. I haven't been able to find a verdict on Jim Harrison, so I have to ask. I fear the worst, but I'm holding out a little hope since you have complimented his buddy Thomas McGuane. Yeah. Well, I love Jim Harrison's work. I think it's fantastic. Even the fiction, which I don't think he's fitted for. I think it's fantastic. But there are certainly dude bro elements involved in him. Not just in his written work, but also in the persona that he cultivated. There are definitely dude bro elements there. I think the reason why real brass-plated, card-carrying, due-paying dude bros don't take him up, and they don't really take up Tom McGuane either, I think is because their antennae are showing them that there's actual quality here. Lots of it. And quality doesn't care about the birth rates. Quality doesn't care about the manosphere. And they want their quality to care about the manosphere. They want it, in other words, true dude bros want their dude bro lit to be more weaponizable than genuine quality literature is, or ever could be. So they read something like Jim Harrison or Thomas McGrain, or even, I would say, Thomas Pynchon at his peak. You notice they don't wholesale adopt him either. They read a figure like that, and they think, this isn't going to do it for me. I don't want to just say that I like this stuff. I want to use it. And I can't use this guy. Which I think for someone like Harrison is the ultimate compliment. So I think you escaped. I love him. I don't dismiss him. I'm just saying he is definitely, if we have to use the horrible phrase, he's definitely dude bro adjacent. But in a good way. The reason that he's not adopted by them is entirely to his credit. Sadragolshan, on your advice, I always choose my favorite translations, but only among the most accurate, complete versions, and from among the top 3 to 5 recommended ones. Well, keep in mind, my advice never is to ignore what's recommended. In other words, I first filter out so-called bad ones and choose my favorite, or sometimes I read all the 3 to 5 translations if I find which 3 to 5 are best. Okay, all right. That is not my advice. You're saying on my advice, but you're reciting something, you're describing something that's almost the opposite of what I advise. I'm saying ignore the critical accolades completely. Line up all the available translations of whatever work you have in mind and pick the one you like the most. Pick the one that agrees with you the most. You'll get to the other ones, the ones that are critically acclaimed, down the line. But if you don't get to the book first, then you'll never get to the others. Keep in mind, that's my advice, not the synopsis you're giving here. My question, what are the top 3 to 5 best translations of these works? Or easier, which fewer translations are really bad, so I avoid them all? And then you give a list. The Iliad, the Odyssey, the Divine Comedy, Madame Bovary. These are not Q&A questions. What you're asking me to do is work. You are asking me to write a doctoral dissertation. And to do it off the top of my head during a Q&A that involves a lot of other people aside from you. I do not have a top 3 to 5 translations of these works. And it wouldn't matter anyway, because the translations you should be going with are the ones that work for you, regardless of whether I think they're good or bad. I can't, it's not possible. You've got 7 authors here, 3 to 5, that's 35 books, 35 translations. You want me to reel off right now for the next 40 minutes? No. I'm going to have to pass. Feel free to email me. Let's see. India Man says, I know Michael K. Vaughan has promised a review of ROM Space Knight. He's threatened one. I don't know that promise is the right word. Can you give us an early preview and tell us exactly how great you think it is? I think you can probably guess how great I think it is. Michael Lombardo says, you've said you watch a lot of YouTube. What type of videos do you usually give a wide berth? I don't like the ones that are completely insincere, the ones that are just click farming. I can't stand them, no matter what they are. Lazy YouTubers drive me nuts. They drive me nuts. The ones who do just as much as they need for monetization. One note, they hit it, they move on, they don't do any original thinking, it's just in and out. And I don't care where on the political spectrum you are. Farron Cousins has a YouTube channel, Fair and Balanced. It obviously doesn't need my support because he's on his way to 500,000 subscribers. But he's this way. One note, one thought, basically one sentence. And then he's out. And on the other end of the spectrum, Ryan Kinno, a neck-bearded quasi-fascist. On the other end of the YouTube spectrum. Same thing. One note, basically one sentence, and then he's out. Lazy stuff like that I cannot stand. And also bad, stupid, sensationalistic stuff. If you're doing a live stream with a guest about a serial killer, you had bloody well better not be giggling at any point during that. You had better not be making cutesy-poo in-jokes when your subject is a serial killer. You had better not be doing that. Also, science documentaries that are entirely AI produced makes my skin crawl. Also, science documentaries that are produced by humans but are still dumb, just really dumb. What, you want to watch a YouTube documentary on what the Yellowstone supercaldera is? You can tell in 5 seconds whether you're going to get a serious video or whether you're going to get something dumb, something that is not only a product of the dumbing down of all of our minds and attention spans that is the cause of that is prompted by social media, but also is playing to that dumbing down. Yeah. I avoid them completely. I click on them, which is all that their producers want, because I can't know what they are until I click on them. But once I'm done with that, I'm done with that forever. And that give a wide berth. We'll stop here and we'll move on to the next installment here.